part two, second week of the Ten Commandments. Go ahead with whoever has a question.
It was me.
Oh, okay.
This, like I've been listening to you quite a while, but I'm still quite a novice at it. And I wanted to know how, when you look at the letters, how do you, when you put them together into a word, how do you know with I'm trying to know how to ask this. How do you come up with what that means collectively? So, like, when you look at Bereshith, we get the phrase "in the beginning." So how do you come up with "in the beginning" from those letters put together? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I'll show you on that one. So just so you know, I read, I think it was Stan Tenon's book. Stan Tenon, I talked to him a couple times years ago, and he's a Jewish astrophysicist. He's an American, brilliant guy. I believe he's still around. I haven't heard of that he's deceased, but he's when I first heard about his stuff, it was like 25 years ago or something. His group was Meru, M-E-R-U. That's this mythical mountain of wisdom or something from India, I think. But the point is, he was saying how he was raised Jewish, so he recognized the letters of the alphabet, but he never learned to read. So just to say, just because somebody's Jewish, and you think, oh yeah, this person knows Hebrew, not necessarily. So this study we're doing, which is the point I was trying to get at, where we're saying, these are the letters, this is what they mean, you can read them, and this is how you compare the paleo to the modern so that you can pick up a Torah and actually read it. This is a rare thing that doesn't just happen. And when I was going on a few minutes ago in the earlier section of saying, don't expect the Jews or Christian scholars to tell you how to do this or to tell you the truth, even if they knew. It's not their responsibility. It's ours, and this is what we bump into. So Stan Tenon didn't even know how to read, but he recognized the Hebrew letters, and he looked at Genesis 1:1, just the first verse, 7 words: Bereshit bara Elohim et, there's the Aleph Tav, Hashemayim ve'et haaretz. Okay, 7 words, and one of them's not translated, but all of a sudden he thought, wait a second, in modern Hebrew, there's 5 Sophite letters. So add to the 22, that makes a total of 27. And there happens to be 27 letters in that sentence. And guess what? The last letter is a Zadi Sophite, which is the 27th letter. So there's 27 letters ending with the 27th letter. And there was a third factor, I forget what it was. Anyway, he thought, this can't be a coincidence. This has to be by design. So he started looking at just the first verse of Genesis, and he studied it for 30 years as an astrophysicist. He started looking at all the ancient esoteric books, stuff from the Zohar and stuff from other religions, and on and on and on. 30 years studying Genesis 1:1, and never just considering that it means in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. He didn't even look at that narrative. He was looking at why this list of these 27 letters in this particular order. But in his study, I think I think one of the books he wrote is the Alphabet That Changed the World, I think is what it's called. I have a copy of it. It's a great study, but he doesn't believe, at least he didn't at one point, I don't know what he believes now, but he didn't necessarily believe in Yahweh or the God of the Bible or in Jesus or Yeshua or any of that business. So I don't know what he believes. I'm not condoning his theology, but what I'm saying is that in his book, I think he said it was that there's like 900 ways to translate Genesis 1:1. So think about that. How do you get 9 ways to translate Genesis 1:1? But I'll show you something, and he breaks down just the word Bereshit. So I'll just write it in the paleo. So here you have Bet, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yod, Tav. Bereshit. Trying to get it on camera there. Okay,
Says-
so the letter bet as a prefix means in. Rosh is beginning, but it's also head, but it's also foundation. Shin Yod Tav is the foundation that you set something on. So in the beginning of the foundation. It's just translated in the beginning. The letter Hey is typically the word the, and there is no Hey in this. So it doesn't say in the beginning. It could say in beginning. Rosh could be in the beginning, but just to show you, if I look up the word spelled Resh Aleph Shin in the dictionary, and again, this is the Klein's dictionary, and I say this because some people might have it online, so they just look at it. It's page 600 and 601. 600, Rosh means head, chief, leader, top, summit, beginning, division, part, section, number, sum, principal, capital, as in money, basis, foundation, venom, like snakebite venom, Rasha, Resh Aleph Shin, Hey is topmost stone. Rashon, if you add the Vav Nun suffix, means first, former, previous, or superior. Rashonah, first, before, in the first place. Rashonot, see, I'm just adding other suffixes to the suffixes. Antiquity, preference, or priority. Rashoni, first, primary, original. Rashon Eot, antiquity, primacy, originality, all of which are synonyms for the word paleo, by the way, just so you know. Rashot, headship or primacy. Rashi, chief, principal, main, primary. Rashia, headpiece in the harness of an animal, heading or header, which is used in football. Rashiot, leadership. Rashish, now you take the sheen and add a yod sheen, so you're taking the last letter and duplicating it. A small head or capitulum, which is part of anatomy, looking at maybe part of a flower or part of an organism. Rashit, beginning, first fruits, choice, best part. So here I've given you probably, what now, 20, 30 different definitions of Rosh. If I stick the word Bet Resh Aleph as if it was one word, bara, that's the word, that's the first word of Genesis 1. The second word is simply Bet Resh Aleph. So it's a duplication of those three letters, and it means to create. But then I could show you in the dictionary where it means more than just create. It means to make full and give something a shape. Similar to the word in English, Bet Ret Aleph, which is the female garment. But what I'm saying, it's the same letters, equivalents. But Bet Resh means to make pure or clean. So he purified and gave shape to something that was the original, best, most ancient, superior, in the first place, better than anything. Why, that's a synonym for studying this paleo-Hebrew again. So I could say encoded within the first word of Genesis 1:1 is this Eriktology study. Amazing. And that's not even one of the 900 ways that the Jews have translated it, because they don't want to look at this stuff. Yeah, right. What do you do with that? And then I could plug in that Yeshua is the Resh man stepping out of the house. And Jeff Benner said this has something to do with step out of the house and on his way to work in the field. And there's a fire. And then this Yod is putting his hand to the covenant, and Sheen is like teeth. It's also the monogram of El Shaddai. So here the Messiah steps out of the house of the Father and puts his hand to the fire to secure the covenant. Another way to read it, but the Jews aren't going to tell you that, because they don't believe that in the Messiah necessarily as being Yeshua, but they know there's such thing as a Messiah figure or a Messiah concept. In fact, they believe in a number of Messiahs. They believe, and I say this based on a book called Messiah that I got from a Jewish bookstore, that a Mashiach is anybody for any generation that Yahuwah provides to help that generation. So Joseph was a type of Messiah. David was a type of Messiah. Abraham was. Moshe was. Gamaliel was. What's a Messiah type? It's somebody that steps up to the plate and hits the home run and gets everybody in off the bases, to throw a baseball term in it. In the big inning, playing off the word beginning,
So the first two letters are the word for son, right?
There's two words for a son, S-O-N. One is ben, bet noon, which is also the word bet noon hay, is the word we get the word to construct, as in the construction trades. Bet vav noon, bone, is where we might say that's where we get the structure of bones of a skeleton, the sound bite anyway. Bet noon, bet yod noon is understanding or to think. So to build something together by understanding is where you get the word bean or bina. Beanie, the propeller on your hat, you're thinking, same root word. But this is bar, as in bar mitzvah, but this bar means to be culled of inferior quality, which is to say harvest the clean. So bar mitzvah, mitzvot, are the instructions that we're commanded to regard. So bar mitzvah means here's a guy who's a young man, a child who's now 13 or so, who's now been trained, instructed, and exercised in understanding the clean instructions, or how to do the instructions properly according to the rabbinical structure of teaching, because they're the guys running the school. Anyway, we could go on and on. There's all these different things, and how do you put them into words, and then how do you give definition? And you can do that with every word. And so what I try to do is, well, I wrote up a list once. I could find the list and make it available if you want, if I can remember to do it, where I wrote down about 25 different mechanisms that I used in answer to your question, how do you come up with this stuff? There's about 25 different mechanisms. There's looking in the dictionary. There's looking at the letter meanings. There's looking at every 2-letter and every 3-letter. And then there's looking at it with different prefixes and suffixes. There's looking at the pictograph. There's applying it to the Mishkan pattern, applying it to the Moedim pattern, applying it to the gospel narrative of this is the identity of the Messiah. And I mean, I could elaborate, but it's more and more. In other words, there's quite a bit to it. It's not just in the beginning. Although it is in the beginning, it's not just in the beginning.
So have you played around with, how, when you're breaking it apart, taking all those different meanings and then putting them together to see what kind of what it says? You know what I mean? I mean, you sat there and you broke this up into this, and then you broke it up into this, and then you tried different combinations within the word, and then you get it says something else. It may say something a little different, and then take all that and put it together. And
the letter tet, the 9th letter, is a basket. From the top view of the basket, it's drawn as a circle with an X in it. Well, the X is the shape of the letter tav, which means the final letter. So you could say a full basket. The other way to draw the tet is sideways with an X this way. So it's a side view or a top view. If you're chipping and you're trying to chip a circle, the chances of blowing out the center are pretty easy. So if you look at one form of the ancient letter tet, it's a U shape with an X, which is maybe a little easier to keep it intact. What I'm saying is you take all the various options, you throw them in the tet, you throw them in the basket, and then you just kind of stir them up and say, well, this is all the stuff that's in there. This is how those ideas flavor each other. But you're only using valid ideas, valid stuff, but you take all those 25 different ways and stick them in the same basket together for that particular word you're looking at. And then you don't say, which one of these am I going to consider? You look at all of them. And so sometimes I end up with a whole page from one sentence or sometimes one word, like with just Bereshit. I mean, 900 different ways and not even necessarily considering that it's talking about the Messiah. Gosh, I mean, that's a book. just on one word.
Well, you have the Messiah is mentioned with the Aleph Tav, because he says in Revelation that he's the Aleph Tav. So, I mean, people say that it has no definition or whatever, but can't you just, like, everywhere you see Aleph Tav? I mean, you have him in the fourth place and in the sixth place, with kind of lines up with the fourth millennium when he came the first time, and then the sixth when he comes back, marked by the nail or the Vav.
Here, let me show you another way. So Mark Gravel, I don't know if you know Mark, he's one of the guys on the talk here. One of the things he does is when he's just for what it's worth, Mark sees things a little different than me, and that's okay. But he's, over the years, he's been writing up a study of the various parashahs, and he's got them all compiled, and you're welcome to look at them. He'll make them available to you. But one of the things he does is he goes back and he says, well, how many words have both Aleph and Tav in them? Bereshit is one that has both an Aleph and Tav. So he'll count how many different words, and then he'll apply his understanding to saying, well, if there's three of them, the number three means this, according to, like, Bullinger wrote a book called Numbers in Scripture, and he assigned a value to every number. And it's like, I may agree or disagree with some of Bullinger's opinions. We could talk about that on another occasion if you want, but it's neither right nor wrong. It's how you see it. But here's another way let me show you something. Yes, there's an Aleph and a Tav in the word Bereshit, but in between the two letters is Shin Yod. Now, if I was to look up in the dictionary here, and I'll find it for you, I know that the word Shin Yod is the word for a gift. It's on page 653. Shin Yod means a gift or a present.
That is cool.
So I could say, as a gift or a present, the Messiah steps out of the house to work the covenant for who? Well, as we described, Yeshua even said, I've come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So Yeshua came from the heavens to the earth that even Nicodemus recognized, somehow putting himself in a humbled, contrite, weakened dal. So to say he came as the door so that we could find our way through the door back to the house of the Father. But see, it's a play on words, because dal and dalit and dalal means a bucket that you put on a rope and you drop down to the bottom of the well to grab up water and lift it up. So the concept of lowering something down as a container to get something down here and drag it back up, like lifting Joseph out of the dungeon into Pharaoh's throne room, is a picture of dalit. For Yeshua to come down here to gather up the lost sheep of the house of Israel and bring them back to their lofty abode as Yahuwah's favored people is a picture of dalit. And for Yeshua to weaken himself, to be smitten and afflicted, which is nun kaf, is part of that picture. And the only way to see the full meaning of the words, and this plays into the idea, Daniel 12, until the time, ayin dalit, ayin tav. See the door, see the what? The sign, the mark. Understand that Yeshua, when he claimed to be the door, is the key to understanding the meanings of the letters. And the meanings of the letters is referenced by the tav. Then to ayin the tav is to behold the meanings of the letters, which Miles Jones says don't do. And the Christians don't, and the Jews have an esoteric way of reading the modern flame, but not the paleo, because the paleo are considered heathen, idolatrous engravings, which is why I was going on about that earlier, which is to say, this is the stigma against the study. I'm acknowledging it, I'm validating it, but saying, I believe that's what Yahuwah used to keep this all hidden until now. And if you ayin dalit, ayin tav, see that understanding Yeshua is the way to understand each letter, but the real Yeshua, not the fake Christ or an imposter Christ, but the real Yeshua is the guy identified by all 22 letters. And so the 22 letters in order, as James Ralph realized, is critical. So when Nadab and Abihu say, oh, let's add to it, let's get these really cool incense burners and come strutting through the middle of the courtyard, wham, Yahweh killed him and said, you've profaned it. Just like Moshe picking up the stick and beating the rock the second time instead of speaking to it. That's it. You're not going in the promised land. You blew it. Gosh, we can't mess with what he's doing because everything means something. The more you see, the more you realize this is all really, really critical and exact. Meticulous and pedantic is dalit kuf, dak, dak. Literally like duck, duck, goose. You know, I've said before that hokey and pokey, that kids game, hokey pokey, both are Hebrew words that are exactly fit to the way the game is played. Duck, duck, goose. If you look at dalit kuf and then you look at gimel vav samek, I think the word is, it's all Hebrew words that we think as English words that plays in. I mean, it's like, as you, Psalm 139 is about this, that even all the foreign languages, especially ones that are Semitic based, you can open them up and look, and there's roots, there's vestiges, there's like DNA of the Hebrew in it, all of which points to the truth, verifying this entire study. It's really amazing. And you can take it as deep as you want to. Like I said, play with English sounding words, Latin words, sometimes Spanish words, or like the word samurai, a Japanese word, which is exactly the meaning of shin mem resh, watch, keep, and guard. What Adam was told to watch, keep, and guard the garden. That's shomer, shin mem resh, which is the word samurai. Huh?
Adam was a samurai.
That's right. As should we be doing this? Wait a minute, somebody's going to take off there? Okay, well, does anybody else have anything they want to say? We don't want to leave anybody out of the
I appreciate my logic. I just getting this. I'm just really starting to try to understand this, and I want to understand. Put the letters together. How do you come up with the word that it conveys? You know, so I definitely appreciate you explaining it to me.
Well, here I'm on page 600 of the dictionary, still open, the letter resh aleph hey. Well, if you realize hey is a suffix, but there is no word that's resh aleph. Hey is the feminine suffix, so you can put other letters. But you know, shin yod tav is a foundation, but this resh aleph, it's like, well, can you break it off and, as it were, stick a hey in there? Part of this study, the benefit of the dictionary is, yeah, just think about that. What does resh aleph hey mean? In relation to what you were just talking about, means to see, look at, behold, perceived, conceived, understood, observed, considered, regarded. He chose, he approved of, he preferred, was seen, was visible. It's different variations of the spelling, like nun resh aleph hey, and we're just looking at resh aleph hey, appeared to be, seemed, approved of, caused to look at, was shown, exhibited, or allowed to see. It's also the word vulture and lungs. What does lungs have to do with vulture, with being allowed to see something? Sight or exhibition, worthy, fit, suitable. So what I'm saying is, the same way a vulture is way up high and senses where the dead carcass is, it has to do with the fumes going up, you could say, or electromagnetics. And so they kind of lurk around, getting a sense, getting a feeling. Then you have to believe that somehow Yahuwah will allow us to see and put on exhibition what this stuff is. But it has to be ayin dalet ayin tav. It has to be true to the meaning of the letters, and has to be true to Yeshua being Mashiach. Those two yoked together, ayin dalet ayin tav, held together, what each one validating the other, I believe, is this secret code in Daniel 12:4, proving this study. But that's my interpretation of ayin dalet ayin tav. It's simply translated until the time. And then the word kuf zadi means the end, but kuf zadi also means to turn a corner. So it's not necessarily the end of the world. It's just when things are different. And so the end of the curse, 2010, well, that's the end of something. Kuf zadi on page 588 means end, destruction, or ruin. Kuf zadi hey, to cut off. Extremity, destroyed, removed, separated. But kuf zadi hey also means to decide. The end of something, the cutting of trees, or a limit. So it's the limit of what? Well, if there was a 2,730-year curse, then the end of that curse would be in 2010, starting in 721 BC. So when he said, hide the word and seal the book until the time of the end, it's not necessarily the end of the world. It's the end of an era, a phase, a dispensation. Maybe it's the end of the, remember, the handwriting on the wall appeared when Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, I think it was what, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon was having a party. And all of a sudden he went too far. He said, hey, bring me the goblets and the pitchers and that my grandfather stole from the temple of Yahuwah in Jerusalem, and we're going to drink out of those to celebrate the fact that those stupid Jews are a bunch of punks and that we whooped them. And then the hand appeared writing on the wall, Mene Mene Tekel Upharsin. Nobody could read it. Was it because it was written in paleo-Hebrew? Maybe. Daniel was the only guy that could read it. So he could somehow read the letters, knew what the letters meant, knew what the words meant, and could interpret it. And he said, that's it, king. You've been weighed and measured. You've come to your end. It's all over. Tonight, your kingdom is handed over to the Persians, Medes and the Persians. The word parse, where we get the word parashah, parsnip, cut into pieces, and Persian. That was it. So what I'm saying, he came to an end. So the people that, like the Babylonians, that Yahuwah has allowed run the show of this world for the last 2,000 years, and going back to the days of David, 3,000 years. When do they come to their end? Kurt mentioned the statue in Babylon, Daniel chapter 2, where the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. Daniel interpreted it and said, it's translated in English, a rock not hewn with human hands comes flying out from where? From that it was carved out of a mountain or something, and hits the feet and topples the statue. But there's another way to read that sentence, and it means this rock not with human armed aggression. So is it not hewn with human hands, or is it a conflict engaged not with human armed aggression? Armed conflict. Well, who translated this stuff? Well, if they didn't Ayin Dalet Ayin Tav, then they don't necessarily have the right translations, nor have we necessarily inherited the best way to read anything Yahweh said, King James, NIV, or even Stern's Jewish Bible. It's not necessarily accurate. So for us to go back and look at all these matters, like Bereshit, and come up with all these different possibilities, the only way to be true to it, Ayin Dalet Ayin Tav, what are the terms of the covenant? Tav. What are the meanings of the letters according to the terms of the covenant? That's Ayin Tav. Putting the letters in the scales of balance of what did Yahweh say, what's Israel supposed to do? Israel blew it every single time out of the gate. Yahweh talked about it on the mountain. Moshe talked about it in their Deuteronomy, saying you guys have been stiff-necked and rebellious, and you've done it in the past, and you're going to do it again in the future. You're going to make a graven image. You're going to blow it. But then in the last days, Deuteronomy 30, you're going to come back to these words. Okay, this is the covenant. We come back to these words. And Yeshua said, I'm the door. But he's also the Dalet. What does that mean? He's the guy that came down to bring us back up to the house of the Father. So for the Jews not to acknowledge him, too bad for them. It's to their shame. It's to their ignorance. But for the Christians to not recognize Yahuwah, our Elohim, nor his covenant, nor his day, nor his name, his promises, his words, too bad for them. It's their shame of ignorance. So here we are learning this, and there's nobody else to go to learn. Because even such big shots as Michael Rood validated Miles Jones's book. And then you got other linguistic professional big shot linguists like Michael Heiser and Michael Brown, and they both hate the paleo stuff. Isaac Moseson, I think a lot of the man, but he hates this stuff too. So does Stan Tenen, apparently back then. I mean, who knows where these guys are at? You could change your mind any day. I'm just saying these guys are all wonderful big shots, really smart guys that are on record as disparaging the paleo. So where's anybody going to go to find this reality? Hey, you go to the Eriktology YouTube site, but other than that, it's like, have at it. If you can prove any of this wrong, that it ought to be different, go ahead. Let us know. None of us want to be wrong about this.
Jeff Bender's the only other person I've seen that really goes into anything. He does little sound bites on YouTube.
But he doesn't talk about this Mishkan pattern thing. He talks about the real nature and structure of the language. Gilin, did you have something to say?
Yes, actually. I just want to put this point that I believe that this is one of the most important thing to really clarify which God, who's the God we're following. And this is really what you're doing with the name of Yahweh, to really know who he is and how we know him. Because we keep hearing all over the places, people are saying, oh, no, he believes in God, it's a God, it's okay, and bring God to America. And this is so wrong, because Yahweh always rebuke Israel to turn to other gods. So it's really important right now to define who's God, who is the real God, what's his name, and what's his Shem. And I think what you are onto, I have a short question. You were talking about when you say Heye Asher Heye, related to his name, and then when you say Anoki Yahweh. My question is there a quick answer to why those two different names in those two different contexts?
So yeah, there's a couple different ways to answer that question. Let me do it like this. The one you didn't ask about is Ani. If you look at the word Ani, it means a ship or an admiral of a fleet of ships. So I see the word Aleph Nun Yod as meaning like a military commander. And when Yahuwah refers to himself as Yahuwah Zavot, Zadi Bet Aleph Vav Tav, it's translated master of legions or captain of forces, captain of hosts, lord of hosts. Okay, so Ani is a matter of like an admiral with his fleet, or they like Alexander the Great with all his empire forces taking over the world. It's that kind of a military picture. If you look at Ehyeh, it's Aleph Hey Yod Hey, and as we said before, Hey Yod Hey is a verb to exist. Aleph, first person. So is it saying I exist? Well, maybe, but just as an interesting graphic, if you were going to do a graphic, some drawing with a pen of simply showing existence as a minimal form, what shape would you draw? This is just artistic graphics.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I would put a kuf, actually.
A kuf?
Yeah.
But that's not a kuf to say you exist. A kuf, I have to take my pen and draw a bunch of stuff. What's the minimal that you can possibly draw?
A circle.
Dot?
A dot. So if Ehyeh is going to be, so if you look at dimensions, two-dimensional is a line or a plane.
Right.
What's one-dimensional? Simply a dot.
Dot.
It's either there or it's not there. The word asher, interestingly enough, the word asher means a line. The word yishar means straight. And then here's another Ehyeh. So if I was going to do a graphic of Ehyeh, asher, Ehyeh, and I'm just playing around with thoughts here. Ehyeh, a dot, it exists. A straight line, Ehyeh. There's a graphic representation of Ehyeh, asher, Ehyeh. Now I could say, what's Ehyeh? Aleph, Hey, Yod, Hey. Hey is an expression. I'm going to read it backwards. Yod is this hand that makes something. So that's like the creator's hand. And then there's this other expression. And then the Aleph is the silent letter that says I am or I will, the guy that has the idea. So if I was going to read Aleph, Hey, Yod, Hey. If I was going to read that Ehyeh, Hebrew is written right to left. If I read it from left to right, that means what is seen or expressed in creation is exactly what was expressed by the idea. So the one who had the idea expressed it as the creation reveals it. In other words, what he built was tov. It worked. It was a perfect expression. So I could say what you see is a straight line connected to what he intended you to see. Or Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh is a 3-word expression of the same. The intention is expressed in what he built and the way it appears for us to behold. Well, that's also a straight line connecting 2 dots. So somehow, just graphically, Ehyeh is, he intended it, and what you see can directly be observed to tie back into that intention. It's kind of like saying, if the DNA expresses it, it's because he built it to have that expression, and the DNA is the straight line that holds it and carries it. Well, I could say the same thing about the alphabet then. Whatever he wanted us to know, he put into human mind to be able to process, which is a straight line back to how he wanted to reveal himself. Well, then for somebody to say, humans can't possibly have a regard of the Almighty. Well, that's not true, because the Almighty, going back to John 1:1, invented this word, which I believe is the Hebrew alphabet, which was exactly fit to the consciousness of humanity, the consciousness, the spirit, the ruach, the brain processing physically as well as ethereally, because through the word, everything that was made projected through this word. Then Yeshua became the word. So somehow, if we behold the real Yeshua, it comes in the construct of man, of humanity, but it's all man is a construct of this word, which is a construct of Ehyeh. Ehyeh, the infinite one that's immaterial, made this word fit to human being consciousness like a hand fits a glove, so we can behold and fathom and perceive exactly that what the word will allow. Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. But Anoki is I will plummet myself, which is a vertical straight line like the letter I, which is to say, this other message, I will reduce myself, put myself vulnerable in the form of a man. Not that then we should worship the human. No, he said, do not worship any image. So that's where the conflict is. Do you worship Jesus Christ as God? Wait, we know he comes from heaven, but how do you acknowledge that he came from heaven in the form of a man? Don't worship the man, worship him. Anyway, that gets into that whole other bigger matter, but he set up the conflict. We're just trying to figure out how to do him justice within the conflict as humans.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick.
Anyway, somebody else had a question. Yes.
Hey, I just want to make a comment, and I don't know if it means anything, but I think that's brilliant with the dot with the line connecting them. But if you bring those dots together, you create a frequency.
If you bring the dots together, you create a frequency. Yeah. Could you elaborate what you mean?
If keep the line at the distance it is, I mean the length.
If you bring the dot closer, the line, so it goes into a zigzag.
The frequency. So you can actually say that his words are that line, and then that's it.
So you're moving these 2 dots in it puts slack into the line, as it were.
Right. It's his. It brings us closer to him by using his language.
That's an interesting. See, now we're just looking at stuff and messing around with it. Exactly that. Good job. I think somebody else had put their picture up for a second or turned the camera on or had something to ask or say. Anybody else there that's
when you were describing the Asher Ehyeh, when you were showing that line with the dots, the dot line dot. I was thinking about that. You had mentioned last week about quantum entanglement.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking about. For it, just kind of like is amazing, and maybe you could talk a moment about that or something. But it's just so amazing. You can maybe mention that. That would be great. Pretty cool.
Well, we talked about, what year was that? Was that 2017 and Georgia Sukkot, or 18?
I think it was 2018.
2018. It's on Eriktology.net if anybody's interested. We're at Sukkot in Suches, Georgia. And I was talking about a book called Matrix Energetics by Richard Bartlett, and a book called, I think it was called Healing Codes or something, by Alexander Lloyd, I think his name was. Anyway, it all had to do with quantum physics and this concept of quantum entanglement. And Sally, didn't you say that you just punched up those words online and did some reading about it?
Yeah, there's quite an array of topic on that. There's lectures and videos and so on. I ended up watching a documentary on quantum entanglement that PBS Nova put out, and it's on YouTube. I shared it to the Eriktology chat page, and then there was another, and that was a really great documentary. But then there was another forum with the World Science Festival that had a discussion about the quantum mechanics and quantum physics theory and quantum entanglement. And that has also been posted to the Eriktology chat page. But this is so amazing, this stuff is. And that dot line is like in the documentary, there were, two electrons that could be anywhere, any distance apart from one another. And once they are observed, they are identical. Like they'll light up, and their properties are identical. They do not seem to have that. If they're not observed, they're sort of fuzzy. But once they're observed, there's this identical property, and they sort of behave exactly the same. So if one electron is being observed, that electron sort of stopped, and they look for the other one, and it's doing the exact same thing with identical properties. So
here's the interesting thing about that, is that what she's saying is that if there's an electron here in a glass of water, and then there's an electron on the planet Neptune being observed by somebody somehow, us looking at the glass of water can affect what's happening to that electron on some planet way out in the galaxy somewhere. I'm just saying that it's that kind of a remote sort of a thing. So here's the thing. Yahweh said in Deuteronomy 6, following the 10 commandments, he said, you will, that's this command, you will speak of these things. They want to know about which chat page. Somebody, you could inform what that is. Just let me finish the sentence. When Yahuwah said, you will speak of these things. Okay, that's yourself. And you will teach them to your children. So what I'm saying is by this, is that this is a encapsulation of the graphic letter bet, right? Like a tadpole. Here's the head, and here's the backbone going out to the tail of the frog tadpole, right? So here's the self, the mind. You will think, and then you will reach out and speak, teach your children. When you lie down, that's in your own mind, when you close up. And when you rise up, when you engage the society and your family, you will write them on the doorposts of your house, that's your domestic, and on your gates, that's getting out into the community. When you sit in your house, when you walk on the way. So this is all the letter bet. So what I'm saying is that there's stuff in the graphic design of the letters, which are thematic logograms extending as a fractal pattern into the entire universe. And when Yahuwah says, write these and talk about these, it's affecting the entire universe with quantum entanglement. And then you look at Malachi 3:16, And then it says that the people that heard about this stuff, like maybe watch these videos, or they got together with each other and talked about Yahweh's name. And then there's this view of the heavenly throne room where Elohim says to one of his angels, he says, hey, grab a book and document the names of the people on earth who are talking about my name. And when the day comes, when the time, the Ayin Tav is the word time, when the Ayin Tav comes for me to make up or reveal or put on display on exhibition my greatest treasure, then you'll see, because it has to do with the names of these people who are talking about his stuff, he says, then you will see the difference between those who ponder righteousness and those who ponder evil, from those who think on his name versus those who think only about their personal kingdom and how to enlarge and exaggerate it. So to facilitate more and more people engaging in the act of pondering Yahweh's name, the idea that Kurt wanted to put up these videos where we're talking about this stuff is a direct link to look like Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. If Yahweh says, if you talk about his name and think about his words, it's a direct link to being like his crown in the future revealing of his treasures. Well, then how do you do that? How do you get more people to think about and talk about his name? Because his name isn't mentioned in the English Bible. They change his name. They might call him Jehovah. That's a change. They might call him Hashem Adonai or the Lord. That's all a change. Or God. That's all a change. The only way is to promote the reading of the Hebrew, and especially, I believe, the ancient Hebrew. And even if the Jews don't like it, it's Ephraim's phylactery. It's the 10 tribes coming back to confederate the 12 tribes of the kingdom of Israel. The Jews don't have to like it. It's not about them. They can join us if they want. But the point is, how do we facilitate the regathering of the lost tribes? By putting on these Hebrew studies and these videos. So it's the quantum entanglement, is that as we are talking about Yahweh's name and his language and his day and his moedim and his commandments, it's affecting all the other electrons in the entire universe resonate, hod, vibrate differently as we align our hearts with his heart and our mind with his mind, because it's not just verbal, it's mind and heart. All your heart, all your soul, your words, your actions, everything affects these resonating. And the word hod, as in hodu la yawak hi tov, ki leolam chazdo. And then you could analyze that sentence as meaning a few other things too, based on this action. So that's why we're doing this, is we're trying to rattle the cosmos.
So Sally had mentioned a chat, and Randall was asking what chat. So people know if you're on the call. These videos are up for 30 days before I edit them. So if you don't want to wait for me to edit them, you can go back and watch them. And then there's an ongoing conversation. Like if you need prayer for something, or something occurs to you while you're reading scripture, you just want to share with the group, this chat's open all the time, you know, and people are in different time zones, and it's an ongoing Israel, being Israel, have a place to connect.
Just for what it's worth, I haven't been able to join on the chat. I've been too busy or distracted or whatever. So this is basically, the chat room is all you guys engaging with each other. It's not just more of me, blah, blah, you know.
That's very little of Eric, actually. He's only here on Sundays, it seems. So
yeah.
But since we're doing the question thing, I just want to, our buddy was it St. Joe? Yeah, St. Joe can we just ask another question? Does somebody else want to jump in and ask one? So I don't want to hog the screen, but Eric, this is a real issue. You stated if we are following the wrong day as far as the Sabbath is concerned, we are bad seed, bad DNA. This is then now become the biggest issue that we can focus on. Let's get into it ASAP, please. I currently follow the new moon as the full moon. See Michael Shabbat. I don't know who that is. I think so. I've heard him mentioned before. But, anyway, just another person wanting us to nail down the calendar thing. Can I just address this?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So, I don't claim to know anything. Okay, I'm a certifiable idiot, but I can hear Yeshua when he says, "No man knows the day or the hour!" Exclamation mark. Only Dad knows, not the angels, not the Son of Man, and certainly not the humans. You guys forgot it. The calendar's completely messed up. But I'm really interested to see how you're going to handle my stuff. So this is the way I see it. I could be wrong, but for 3,000 years almost, we as corporate Israel haven't cared. And now all of a sudden we know how to tell each other how to do it. What are you talking about? It's ridiculous. Not even the angels know. It's in Dad's office and he's not sharing it with anybody. So that's the way I see it, but I could be wrong.
Okay, just for what it's worth, because I've had other people try to. Have you ever had a bug on the ground scurrying around and you have a knife or something, or you're trying to stab him and he's jumping all over the place? I keep trying to avoid this subject like that. You know, somebody's trying to stick me and say, "There he is." There's, use one of these little X-Acto knives or something, and it's like, I'm going to get him. There, that's the calories on. Listen, I'm intentionally avoiding declaring a particular calendar because I see a value and a valid consideration by each of the people I know who are on a different calendar. My wife has a certain way. Pete and Diane up in Montana, they have a certain way of looking. Timothy Asselford up there in Cochrane, Alberta, he has a certain way. Andrew Gabriel Roth has a certain way. Todd Bennett has a certain way. My friends down in California, we even did a video with that green Rolls Royce talking about Chodesh being. We don't know if Rosh Chodesh is the sliver or the full moon. There's reason to believe why Rosh Chodesh might actually be the full moon. And I did that video with my friend Fred because I'm discussing the reasoning. I happen to know some people who fully believe that the Sabbath day is gauged according to the phases of the moon. I understand that. It seems like that would be a really good plan, but is it? I've got a couple considerations, one of which is when Yeshua was crucified and the Sabbath day was coming up, but is that the 15th? Is the Sabbath day the 15th? If he rose on Sunday, 3 days and 3 nights later, it doesn't seem to fit. The Shabbat being the 8th, the 15th, and what was it, the 22nd? Anyway, the point is, I'd be happy to engage the conversation, but I'm not going to make a specified determination. I know people that go off the Tekufa, the equinox, and then I know people that regard the 30-day month having nothing to do with the moon, like Tim, and he does that based on Noah, but other people say the earth changed during the flood and perhaps expanded by 15%. That the earth cracked and split and enlarged, which is why maybe you have a different number of days in the year now as compared to the 360 days that was before the flood. And whether there's extra 4 days or whether those are the solstice and the equinox days that added 4, it's like there's all these different considerations. And again, they're great considerations. And I personally try to take advantage of the squabble. by going to different Sukkots and different Passovers. And I've been at different people's houses for different Shabbats. And it's like, I'm not going to beat anybody up. I'm not going to say I'm right and you guys are a bunch of idiots or you're wrong. I'm not going to do that. It's worth thinking about. It's worth trying to figure out. It's worth having a reason to do what you do. But I'm not going to punch anybody in the nose for having a different idea. And if I go to your house, I will acknowledge what you've determined without giving you a hard time about it. And if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. And if you want to change your mind, or if you want to try to change my mind, that's fine too. There's another fellow there with his hand up. Go ahead.
Okay. Of course, my understanding of the new moon and the full moon, the new moon being the first of the month, and the full moon being the 15th. But everybody's sitting there stressing about the calendar. I mean, what calendar is Yah on? Isn't he still on a 360-day year, a day year? Because all of his prophecies, like the one in Daniel, 3.5 years, 42 months, those are all based on a 30-day month when you figure them out. So, I mean, people are freaking out about the calendar, and personally, I believe the flood caused the planet to shrink, which means it caused it to spin faster.
Oh, I heard. I think it was Carl Baugh, B-A-U-G-H, with in Texas, Glen Rose, Texas. I think he came and spoke years ago and was talking about that. But have you ever heard of Joseph Dumond at citedmoon.com?
Oh yes, I listen to his stuff too. He's and that's another thing too, is that he's the knowing the Jubilee and Shemitah cycles, how that tied into the 120 years that Yah gave mankind to get their crap together. That was it was 120 Jubilee years, years being 980, not 1,000, or the millennium being 980 years, not 1,000.
Yes. So if people don't know, just let me interrupt you here for a moment, then you can continue. The Jubilee is supposed to be on the 50th year, called the Yovel. So
Right.
the Jubilee, the book of called Jubilees is called Yovelim. But anyway, the point is what Joe Dumond determined or figured out or whatever is you count to 49. Okay, that's 7 sevens like Shavuot.
Right.
The 50th year, that would be the Jubilee.
Cycle.
But do you count to 50 and then the 51st year is year one in the next cycle? Or do you count to 49 and the 50th year being the Jubilee is also year one of the next 49 counting? So if you count 49 and then the 50th is also year one, you get 49, 49, 49, 49, and you end up with only 980 years in a millennium rather than counting to 50 and then another 50 and then another 50. And so Joe went back and recalculated from the earliest of times, and he wrote a book called The Prophecies of Abraham, another book called 2300 Days of Hell. Great books, but is he right? Well, he lines up human history and shows you how if you go by the 49-year count, this happened and this happened and this happened, and it's like, wow, it sure looks like he's accurate. But is he? I don't know. It's worth considering. Jonathan Cahn, the Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, wrote a book. It might have been called Paradigm, I'm not sure, but it's one where he was looking at all these different events that happened in Israel, going back to the 6-Day War and various other conflicts in World War II and all, looking at people's names and looking at events and synchronizing everything. And then other people say, yeah, but that government isn't sacred to Yahweh. It's not Kadosh Yahweh. So that government means nothing. And it's like, what? All I'm saying is that there's a point and a counterpoint to all these matters. And I find them fascinating and interesting, but I don't have enough information, like with the shape of the earth. I don't have enough information. I'm happy to hear this expert and that expert, but I don't have the means to determine which one is right and which one is wrong. And maybe there's a weird blend. I don't know.
Since Yahuwah is all about patterns, and the Shemitah and Jubilee are all patterned after the 7-day week. So you like for your Shemitah, you go 6 years, and then the 7th year is the Shemitah.
Yep.
So if you have 7 of those, and you count that last Shemitah as the Sabbath day, then when you get to the Jubilee, you've gone 7 Shemitahs. The next day would be Sunday, which would be the first day of the week. So the first day of the week would be the 50th year. So that's 2 years that you would let the land rest, and everybody would go, captivities, all the rules that are in Leviticus 23. So, and also if you look at if you're looking at the counting of the Omer, that also teaches you about the Jubilee, because it says that you count 7 weeks or 50 days starting on the Shabbat. Now I know the Jewish culture, they think it's after the high Sabbath, but it can't be the high Sabbath. It has, because it doesn't line up with the pattern of the week.